This is the instructional video for the science assignment for Thursday, February the 4th. This is going to be a passage read aloud, but I'm also going to do some explaining as we do the passage read aloud, a little bit before and some during, and maybe a little at the end. I don't know yet, but that's going to help make this stuff a little bit easier to understand. Now, we talked about this in class on Tuesday, but there's a lot of you who were not in class on Tuesday, so this is going to be the first time you hear it. And for those of you who were in class Tuesday, it's going to be useful to hear it again because, as we discovered on Tuesday, this is not the easiest thing in the world to understand. All right, so if you haven't already done so, you need to make sure that you have the slideshow up. So it's attached to the assignment in Google Classroom. Have this slideshow up. Adjust the zoom to 100% so that this is easier to read. And go ahead and be looking at the diagram and listen to me explaining it. All right? So this is the heart. And for those of you who weren't here Tuesday, you're probably going, well, why does that say right lung? And that says left lung when this is the right side of my screen and this is the left side of my screen. Well, the reason is you have to think about this as somebody's heart and that somebody is facing you. And when people face each other, and if you don't believe me, you can try it with your sibling or a friend or a parent, have two people face each other and ask them to raise their right hand. And you're going to notice that they're not raising, they're opposite each other. So when you raise your right hand and the person across from you raises your right hand, it's going to be opposite. And it's the same concept here. All right, so for this person's heart, his right lung is over here. His left lung is over here. The right part of his heart is over here. And the left part of his heart is over here. We learned on Tuesday that these blood vessels are like pipes, tubes, you can think of them like that are carrying blood. And the two main types of vessels, that's all we're going to worry about in 5th grade, are arteries and veins. This is an artery right here called the aorta. And arteries are blood vessels that are carrying blood away from the heart. Artery starts with A, away starts with A. So it's a great way to keep it straight in your mind. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. So this aorta here is actually carrying blood from the heart and pumping it to the rest of the body. All right. The pulmonary artery, which is right in here, is actually carrying blood just to the lungs. So the aorta is going to pump it out to the rest of the body, and the pulmonary artery carries the blood away from the heart to the lungs. Veins carry blood to the heart. It's blood flowing into the heart, towards the heart. So this is the superior vena cava here. That is a vein. Inferior vena cava, vein. This is carrying blood from the rest of the body back into the heart. We also have pulmonary veins here poking out on the side. Pulmonary means lung. And as you can see here, this is carrying blood to the lungs. That's why there's an arrow pointing this way. So this is part of the pulmonary artery. It's blood leaving the heart through an artery going to the lungs. These down here are veins. These are carrying blood from the lungs back into the heart. And since it's blood flowing back towards the heart, it's coming in through a vein. All right, you don't really need to know, hey, that these are pulmonary veins and these are pulmonary arteries. You don't need to know that bit, but just know that veins carry blood into the heart, arteries carry blood out of the heart. All right, the other things we talked about included deoxygenated blood versus oxygenated blood. So let's start with oxygenated. So it has oxygen in it. That's not a coincidence because blood that is oxygenated has oxygen in it. So oxygenated blood, full of oxygen. And when you see diagrams in textbooks or on your computer screen and it shows blood vessels that are red or parts of the heart that are red, that's because the blood inside of it is oxygenated. And we use the color red to show that it's oxygenated. Deoxygenated. Well, it has oxygen in it, but it has the prefix D in front of it. And D means not. So this means not oxygenated blood. So the stuff that's shaded in blue has blood in it that lacks oxygen, has no oxygen in it. All right. The other thing that's important that we learned is that the heart is split up into 4 chambers, 4 regions, 4 sections, 4 little rooms, however you want to think about it, but the official word is chambers. And we have on the right side here a right atrium and a right ventricle. On the left side of the heart, we have a left atrium and a left ventricle. And as we read the passage, you're going to see what the roles of those different chambers are. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start reading, and I'll stop and refer back to this diagram and explain the concepts a little bit more so that it'll be helpful to understand it. Okay, so when I'm reading this, I'm actually going to start with the second paragraph, just because I feel like it's easier to explain it starting here. So, blood coming from the body to the heart collects in the right atrium. The blood is deoxygenated. The right atrium fills up, a valve opens, and blood moves to the right ventricle. The right ventricle fills up and another valve opens. Blood is squeezed into the lungs to refill with oxygen and to get rid of carbon dioxide. Blood then returns to the left side of the heart to begin another cycle. All right, and the entire process takes about 1 minute. So let's go ahead and talk about this. So blood that is returning to the heart from the body is deoxygenated. Okay, why is it deoxygenated? Because the cells of our body, they need oxygen. And so when the blood arrives at those cells in our body, whether it's a brain cell we're talking about, a cell at the tip of your right pinky finger, wherever the cells are, liver, kidney, bladder, doesn't matter. Those cells need oxygen. And so when the blood is flowing to those cells take the oxygen from the blood for their own use. And so the oxygen runs out as it makes its way through the body because the cells take it up. That's what makes it deoxygenated. And in its place, the cells are giving the blood their carbon dioxide waste. So this blood that's returning to the heart is lacking oxygen, it's deoxygenated, and it's full of carbon dioxide. And when it arrives at the heart, it comes in through these veins right here. Why veins? Because veins carry blood into the heart. And when that blood arrives and comes through these veins here, it pools in this right atrium right here. That's where it enters the heart. And then it is through, when the valve opens, it goes down here into the right ventricle. Now this right ventricle pumps. Okay, it's going to pump this blood somewhere. But it wouldn't make sense to pump this blood back to the rest of the body, would it? The blood is deoxygenated. Why would you send a bunch of blood back out to the body cells that has no oxygen in it and a bunch of carbon dioxide waste? That wouldn't make sense. Those cells don't want that carbon dioxide back. They want oxygen. So where do you think this blood has to go to get rid of the carbon dioxide and to get more oxygen? And if you said the lungs, you're right, because that is where our breathing in of oxygen and breathing out of carbon dioxide takes place. So this deoxygenated blood here is going to be pumped and go to the lungs. And when it leaves this right ventricle here, it's going to leave through this pulmonary artery. Why an artery? Because arteries carry blood away from the heart. It's called pulmonary because pulmonary means pertaining to the lungs. That's just a side note for you. But it's going to go out this pulmonary artery, and it's going to carry the blood away from the heart into the lungs. Now, the blood might go to the left lung, might go to the right lung when you're talking about an individual blood cell, but one of the lungs is going to go to. And when it gets to the lungs, it's going to have that gas exchange where that deoxygenated blood that has arrived at the lungs is going to give off that carbon dioxide waste and take in the oxygen that the lungs have breathed in. So this is why we breathe. This is exactly why we breathe. We breathe to take in oxygen so that our cells can get oxygen. We breathe to get rid of the carbon dioxide waste that our cells have produced. That is the purpose of breathing, is to get our blood full of oxygen to deliver the cell to the cells and get rid of the carbon dioxide waste. So now the blood we're talking about is sitting at the lungs. It's no longer deoxygenated, it's oxygenated. It's full of oxygen. So it's ready to go to the rest of the body, right? But there's a problem. The lung is not a pump. It's not going to pump the blood out of it. That makes no sense. So where does that blood have to go to get pumped to the rest of the body? If you said back to the heart, you're right. So that oxygenated blood that's sitting here in the left lung or sitting here over here by the right lung, it's got to come back to the heart. Not on the right side. That's where deoxygenated blood goes. So the blood that's coming back to the heart from the lungs, it goes to the left side of the heart. Now the blood's coming back to the heart, coming into it, so it's coming in through veins. We call these little guys right here pulmonary veins. Pulmonary because they're pertaining to the lungs, right? Veins because the blood's coming back into the heart. And so when it comes back into the heart, it's going to settle in the left atrium, which is where we are picking up in the passage with paragraph 1. Because remember, I read the second one first. Now let me go back and read the first paragraph. Blood coming from the lungs has oxygen in it. We just talked about it. This oxygenated blood collects in the left atrium, filling it up. When the left atrium is full, a valve opens and blood moves into the left ventricle. When the left ventricle is full, another valve opens and blood moves through the aortic valve. The blood leaving the aorta is under high pressure. The pressure is strong enough to force blood around the body. The blood gives its oxygen and nutrients to the body. The blood then comes back from the body to the right side of the heart. All right, so like I said, that oxygenated blood comes back into the heart, into the left atrium. Now this side of the heart is shaded red because it's oxygenated. When the left atrium fills up, the blood will trickle down here to the left ventricle. And just like the right ventricle, this is where the pumping action is. And so when the left ventricle pumps, it's going to shoot that blood out through this artery here. Why an artery? Because arteries carry blood away from the heart. And this particular artery is a very important artery. It's called our aorta. It's the hugest artery in our body. It's super important. So if you were to damage your aorta, you're basically cutting off your blood supply. So it pumps in through this aorta, and the aorta will take the blood out into the rest of the body. This blood is oxygenated, so it's ready to go to the body cells. And it's going to start that process all over again. The oxygenated blood's going to branch out and go to all the places in the body to deliver that oxygen to the cells. And then once that, oxygen's all run out, the cells have used it, and the blood's filled with carbon dioxide waste again, it's going to circle back to the heart and come in through these veins again. Why veins? Because blood arrives in the heart through a vein. And since it's deoxygenated, it's going to come to the right side of the heart again. So this cycle of arriving in here as deoxygenated blood, trickling down, being pumped to the lungs, coming back, trickling down, being pumped to the rest of the body, going out and delivering all that oxygen and coming back again takes, according to Google, 30 seconds. But according to this passage and according to Brain Pop, about a minute. Look, I got an advertisement for blood pressure medication. That's great. I don't even need that. How appropriate. We're talking about blood. Okay. So, that's that. So why is all this important really quick? Like I told you, the purpose of breathing is to get that oxygen. And that reason we need oxygen are the cells in our body need oxygen. And the way it gets delivered is through the blood. I mentioned this in class on Tuesday, but you may know somebody who's gone to the hospital because their heart is stopped. And one of the biggest concerns with a stopped heart is that it could lead to brain death. Why? Because the brain cells need oxygen. And if the heart's not pumping, the cycle of bringing oxygenated blood has been stopped, right? It's been stopped. And your brain cells need that oxygen to live. And if you go long enough without oxygen, and those cells die, and you could become brain dead, and which essentially means that you are dead. And of course, that would be the outcome. All right, let's move on to the questions. All right, so most of these questions are based on the passage except for the last two, okay? Let's get this in preview. There we go. The last two questions are according to Miss Brinson's explanation. So stuff I've said in this video. All right, number one, according to the passage, how long does it take blood to make one complete cycle in the body? Well, that answer is in the last two sentences. Read those last two sentences there so that you can see what the answer is. And decide whether it takes 1 minute, 1 week, 1 day, or 1 hour for blood to make one complete cycle, according to the passage. Number two, according to the passage, what is oxygenated blood? Now, I explained this. The passage mentions it, and you really should know this, but go back to the text and check, because in the text it says this oxygenated blood, and in the sentence before it, it explains what it means to be oxygenated blood. All right, remember we always say use context, right? Look in the sentence before, the sentence after, because it gives clues for what things mean. Number three, according to the passage, what is deoxygenated blood? Okay. Well, it mentions this blood is deoxygenated here. We talked about what the prefix de means. It would be the opposite of oxygenated blood. All right, so decide whether that is, I don't know what happened there. Blood leaving the heart through the aorta. Is that what deoxygenated blood means? Blood entering the heart into the left atrium. Blood containing oxygen. Blood without oxygen in it. Number four. According to the passage, oxygenated blood arriving at the heart enters the blank, filling it up. Well, we know if it's oxygenated, it's coming from the lungs back into the heart to be pumped to the rest of the body. Where does this blood arrive in the heart? The left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, right ventricle. And if you don't have those straight in your mind yet, well, guess what? The text tells us. So, blood coming from the lungs has oxygen in it. So that's oxygenated blood. This oxygenated blood collects in the, well, there it is. There's our answer. Number five, blood leaving the heart from the left ventricle. Remember, the ventricles are the pumps. So this blood is being pumped out of the left ventricle. Goes through the blank under high pressure. Well, obviously, if it's blood being pumped out of the body, it is going through an artery. So we're looking for the name of this artery that it goes through, and it undergoes that movement under a lot of pressure. All right, and I see under high pressure, the blood leaving the blank. Okay, well, there's our artery we're talking about. All right, does it go through the left atrium, aorta, aortic valve, or pulmonary artery under a lot of pressure? Number 6, true or false? Blood leaving the heart through the aorta is oxygenated. Okay, so let's go find it. Here's the aorta. It's being talked about here. Oh no, I moved that again. Okay. Here's the aorta. It's blood that's leaving the left ventricle. Blood that arrived at the atrium before that. Oh, and it came from the lungs. Okay, so we're going to know if it's oxygen or deoxygenated at this point. So true or false? Number 7, deoxygenated blood coming from the body to the heart collects where? And that's straight out of the text. Blood coming from the body to the heart collects in the and that blood is deoxygenated, the second sentence tells us. I'm just going to get rid of that because that is distracting me. Number 8. Oh, and for number 7, the answers were aorta, left atrium, right ventricle. Number 8, blood pumped from the right ventricle. Remember, our ventricles do the pumping. Blood pumped from the right ventricle goes where? So remember, here's our, right ventricle. Here's our right ventricle. It's blue. It's deoxygenated. We can't pump this to the rest of the body, can we? Because it doesn't have oxygen in it. So where does that have to go to get the oxygen? That's what this question is asking us. All right. If you have forgotten, okay, here it is. The right ventricle fills up. Another valve opens. Blood is squeezed into the, oh, there it is. That's where it's going to get the oxygen it needs. All right, so we got to decide if the blood pumped from the right ventricle goes to the body, to the lungs, to the brain, or to the right toe. Yeah, I'm going to know who hasn't watched this video. They picked a certain answer out of those. Number 9, according to Miss Brinson's explanation in this video, which of these is true? Blood leaves the right ventricle for the rest of the body so that the cells in the body receive oxygen. Well, I just told you that the blood in the right ventricle is deoxygenated. And if it's deoxygenated, its destination better not be the rest of the body or we got a problem. Where does it need to go to get the oxygen? We just talked about that. So, yeah. Blood leaves the right ventricle for the lungs because it needs to pick up oxygen. Blood leaves the right ventricle for the brain so that you won't go brain dead from lack of oxygen. Well, this is deoxygenated blood, so we don't want blood leaving the right ventricle for the brain. Blood leaves the right ventricle for the right toe because they are both on the right side of the body. Yeah, that should make sense to you. So only one of them talks about the right ventricle in the right context. The blood leaving the right ventricle goes where and why is what we're looking for in that question. Number 10, according to Miss Brinson's explanation in the video, the aorta is an artery. What is true of all arteries? Remember to look at the A. Arteries carry blood away from the heart or to the heart. All right, so which of these is true? Does the aorta, which is an artery, carry deoxygenated blood? Does the aorta do that? Does it carry blood into the heart? Does it carry blood out of the heart? Or does it carry blood only to the upper part of the body? Okay, the aorta, remember, this artery right here, it's oxygenated. The blood already got oxygen from the lungs, came back in here, trickled down, and got pumped. So where is this blood going? So that's it. Make sure this is done by 11:59 tonight. I know, again, this is not the easiest concept to get. But what this really shows in all of this, what we're really wanting to take away from this as a exiting point here, is that the circulatory system, which is what we're talking about here, the circulation of blood, and the respiratory system. Respiratory means breathing, right? So the respiratory system with the lungs and the circulatory system with the heart, these work together. They need each other. We breathe for the purpose of our blood delivering oxygen to our body. Our heart beats for the purpose of delivering that oxygen it got from the lungs to the body, along with other things like the heart delivers nutrients and water, other things that the cell needs. But number one on all of that is oxygen. That is like, we got to have that oxygen. So the respiratory system with the breathing and acquiring the oxygen needs the circulatory system to deliver that oxygen. And that is a key 5th grade concept that we need to understand. Another point that was brought up in the brain pop, well, what causes the heart to beat? Well, the brain signals to the heart to beat. So we got nervous system with the brain and the heart, part of the circulatory system, working together. That the circulatory system with the heart depends on the nervous system to know what to do. The heart is a muscle. That's right. It's made up of cardiac muscle. So here we got the muscular system playing a role in this too. So these systems are working together. And we're going to find out in a little bit too that the digestive system, yes, our food and taking in food and nutrients from our food, plays a role in this too. But that's for another day. All right, so again, this is due by 11:59 tonight. If you have any questions, need any help with any of this, just let me know.